What's your biggest question about this personal statement draft? What are you looking for feedback on?
I think the topic for me, I feel like I don't know how to connect it to law.
Right. Okay. Well, first off, you don't have to connect your personal statement to law. Your application as a whole should communicate why law school and why now, but your personal statement in particular is simply a chance to show who you are, to show a more human side of yourself that the numbers and your resume wouldn't necessarily communicate.
Okay. I guess another question I have is the structure of it. Like, I don't know if there should be a specific timeline, like what happened in my life, where am I at now, what I want in the future. Like, do you recommend a type of format?
There's no one format I would recommend. There's no particular formula to this. It is personalized. It is varied. One thing that stood out to me, though, is that, of course, as you said, it's not about you, this personal statement. It's about somebody else largely.
Yeah.
So those run a little bit of a risk sometimes because you do want it to be personal specifically. And when you talk about other people, that can present a little bit of a barrier.
Yeah. So you recommend, in this case, because that person was a big influence, should I just like introduce them briefly and then talk about what I have done with that?
Yes, generally speaking, yes. It's more about your takeaways from the experience. We're talking about someone taking your best friend's life.
Yes.
And you have interactions with the detectives. You have your process of coming to forgive the man who took his life, which is huge. I would go a lot deeper on that and about your thought process and your reflections.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I was a little bit worried when I was writing it that I was focusing on him too much and not enough on myself, because I heard that's like a big mistake a lot of applicants make. So I will definitely look for a way to dive in deeper to how that experience affected me personally.
Correct. And I would spend the entire time focused on that. I wouldn't start talking about everything about your background and your parents and your family. You could make a separate statement devoted to that if you want to.
Oh,
you can, yeah, but I wouldn't cram it all in here.
Okay. So
have you considered writing a diversity statement?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask about the diversity statement. I'm a little bit confused of what exactly it is.
Well, it can be whatever you want it to be, really. It's meant to show a way in which you will bring diversity to the law school, bring diversity to the class, something that only you could bring. It doesn't have to be, people will often talk about race and ethnicity, which you can, but you also don't have to. There could be other ways you bring diversity as well. But if you want to talk about race and ethnicity, you certainly can do that.
So in my case, do you think that I could talk about where I came from and stuff like that on my diversity statement, and my personal statement devoted to like my growth and development from what happened?
Yeah, you certainly could. I would recommend that. That seems like the most natural way to go here.
So how would I start off that statement?
I think the first sentence is a good hook. It really captures the interest. You wrote, "Never would I have imagined myself forgiving the person who was responsible for taking my best friend from this earth, but I did." And then you tell the backstory on your friend, and you give some of the details about the detectives and the event itself. But then you take a little bit of a while to get to your reflections and your forgiveness. I would focus more there. I wouldn't devote quite as many words to the actual event itself because it's not personal in nature.
Okay, yeah. I guess I was just afraid that the reader would be confused in context, like what exactly happened for me to feel that way. So that's why I felt like the need to include it.
I get that. And I think the context is useful. I would just make it as concise as possible.
Okay.
So any details that you could chop out, any way that you could summarize it, I would do that, just that you have more space to devote to yourself.
Okay, so it should be about me mostly then.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Mostly about you. And then the stuff about your family, I think I would put that in the diversity statement, but even still, don't make it all about your family. Make it about you.
When I talk about myself, I identify largely with where I come from. So is that still okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
So the diversity statement, is there a specific length that should be? Or I know that it's not a requirement for a lot of schools, but I've been told that writing the diversity statement is almost like a must because everyone else is going to do it. So I guess I was wondering, like, what makes a diversity statement stand out?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's the same thing that makes all good writing stand out. It's about being compelling, being personal, making it really come to life, showing, not telling. They're all cliche, but it's true. And so the less vague you can be and the less focused on other people you can be, the better. You don't want to laundry list your resume. You don't want to make it about other people. The personal statement, diversity statement don't really have to be that different from each other. The personal statement is longer than the diversity statement and doesn't necessarily have a diversity element to it, but otherwise, it's just good personal writing.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And how should I know that the personal statement shouldn't be an exact reflection of your resume. Would it be okay to still incorporate some of the stuff from my resume, like some of the volunteer experiences I did or internships, and how that relates to who I am?
That's a good question. And it's very tempting to want to include a lot of things from your resume. In this case, in your draft, it does tie in. It is related. So I think that you can mention it in passing, but I wouldn't go too in depth on that because that work could be a separate essay altogether potentially. And you could talk about it in your resume. I'm not saying that you will necessarily write a separate essay on this, but you don't want one personal statement to include too many different things.
Okay, so in my case, I talk about being a tutor for at-risk youth and working at a juvenile detention facility. So I feel like those two things are a strong, I guess, a reason for why I started doing what I did. So is that still okay to talk about if it's really personal?
Definitely. It's okay to talk about it, but again, relate it back to that core topic, the core issue that you want to focus on here. And think about what's the most powerful thing you could focus on primarily.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my next question is letters of recommendation. What should be the timeline for that? Because I just graduated and I just asked for them and I wanted to give them enough time, so about 3 months before, but I haven't given them my personal statement yet. It's not ready. So should there be like a date to submit it by, or any advice you have from who to write them?
Sure. Yeah, I would ask professors, I would ask employers, I would ask anyone who's supervised you in a role, and provide them with copies of your resume and personal statement draft, diversity statement draft. It doesn't have to be complete, doesn't have to be the final draft. It's really more just to give them some background on why you want to go to law school, and so they can see what else you've already covered in other parts of your application. And potentially you could give them some suggestions on what they might talk about. So maybe a bulleted list of, let's say, your term paper topic, your thesis, your things of that nature, whatever it might be, just some specifics that they can incorporate so they can incorporate those details into the letter.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful.
Glad to help. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
I would say just coming to realize that this experience, that the dean of admissions need to see me and not just a lot of fluff that I feel that I added in my personal statement. I need to allow them to see who I am, be vulnerable to, show them my accomplishments. So yeah, I feel like the thing that I took the most was just understanding what the personal statement is and how it should speak to them, because I don't want them to be making any assumptions. I also don't want to be telling them too much about another person. And I want them to be able to see me on paper.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really glad we connected. Keep in touch and let me know if I can help in any way moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.